Hello all, welcome to this Blender tutorial. Today I will be showing you how to apply and the logic behind simple image textures and materials on any 3D object you please. Again, this is more of a beginner tutorial. We can obviously do way more advanced textures in Blenders, things like nodes and grease pencil, etc. However, I'm focused on using the Blender materials over here. Again, I'm in the little material menu down here and showing you all how to take any image you please and simply overlay it on your object. Again, the simpler geometry you have on your object, the better. I have this little house here that I've already made, and we're going to add an image texture to it. So first off, I'm going to hit New over here in the Material window. Again, I've selected my cube object, and then I go to Material Properties, and I'm hit New. Right here where it says Base Color, I'm going to hit the little dot, and I'm going to hit Image Texture. Now, it's giving me the option to mess around with a couple things. I hit Open because I've already pre-rendered this image texture. I go to where it is on my computer, Save Pictures, click on House, and then it'll apply it to it. Remember, there are multiple viewport shadings in Blender. This little one with the little chunk carved out of it, this is the material shading. So it'll show you materials in real time. Boom, it has applied it to our house. However, as you can imagine, this is not at all what my house should look like. Now that we've selected this, I'm going to select the object again. I'm going to go to edit mode. Very important, the next thing I'm going to do, this is going to allow you to edit your materials in real time. I'm going to hit on this top bar right here, UV editing. This is going to open up my actual image file texture. As you can see, this is housemd.png. You can drop this down to see all your other image textures, but this is what I have to work with. Next, very important, I'm going to hit the toggle X-ray. This allows me to select all the faces on my house. I've selected everything. I'm going to right click and I'm going to UV unwrap faces. I'm going to hit unwrap, and then boom, all my faces are now unwrapped on the project window over here in the UV editing side. Now, this is where it gets fun. I'm going back to here. As you can see, it's changed quite a bit. However, it's the same concept. I'm going to select all these things. Remember, you can hit Control to select multiple faces at a time. I'm going to cycle in on this, and I have all these faces right here. I'm going to rotate them. Remember, this is more of a simple solution, but imagine your little UV editing here thing as a palette. It's not an exact one-for-one replica of where it's going to look like on the final model. However, it's meant to let you just take really simple faces and shove them wherever you want. So my base for the house is going to be this beige color. So I'm going to do it for each face. Again, this is more monotonous way of doing things. I'm sure you can find a faster way and skip around, but I'm going to go step by step. Again, select all these faces. Remember, very important, if you feel like all of your faces are really weird and stretched over here in the UV editing, you probably didn't right click and unwrap your textures faces. So make sure you do that. Otherwise, if you're dealing with really simple geometry, things will look not so simple in this UV editing window. I'm going to scale this down again. And again, this is similar to Photoshop and other things. I'm just shoving all my faces over here in this beige corner where I don't need them at the moment. I don't know why my Christmas lights are down there, but they are. I'm going to select all these. And I know that some of these faces are beige already. However, it's nice to have your entire wall or layer, whatever it be, all together, because it's going to make it easier to visualize where the heck we're going to put our textures. So I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this last face over here. And again, things might get weird and misaligned and rotated whenever you unwrap your textures, but that's okay. Don't be scared. As long as you select things, it will select it over here on the UV textures for you. If I were to select the whole house again, it'd show all the faces everywhere. But remember, taking this modularly one at a time, doing each face at a time, makes things way simpler than having to edit every single face at the same time. So I'm going to take this, make it really small, and boom, that's every side of our house. Done. Next, we're going to hit X-ray mode again. I'm on faces right now. I kind of want to be on vertexes because I'm going to do the roof next. So I'm going to select all these. That should be my entire roof and shingle selected. And see how we get a little more complicated because I'm doing one big thing at a time. That's fine. I'm going to move all this. I'm going to scale it down. I'm going to move it over here to my thing, and I'm going to rotate. And this is going to be our first introduction to an actual texture like map. So this is what a texture map looks like, right? However, I have this repeat wooden texture that I want to use for the roof. So I'm going to make sure this is straight. And this does not look good at all, does it? So what we're going to do is I'm going to go here. I'm going to reselect all of these. And I'm going to scale this up really, really big. So get ready. It's going to look a little weird. See, it doesn't look right. We have a solution, though. I'm going to go here. I lied, I don't have a solution. This is one of those instances where I realized that I don't actually have the correct disguising on my. Look, my house roof is kind of wonky. It doesn't look good. It's because the faces don't actually scale. And this is the problem with doing such a simple method. I don't actually have the ability to scale with this wooden floorboard texture because imagine that I wanted to make this really big. Guess what? It obviously starts interacting. Because look, this looks way better for a wooden texture. However, the front's a little weird. But that's fine because guess what we're going to do? We're going to go here. We're going to figure out where the heck those extra little odd bits were. So we're going to go click off this, select this, and I'm going to move this. Now see how it already is moving the thing a little bit? This is where things are going to get weird. I'm going to take this, move it down here, right? And then I'm also going to go out here and take this other side and move it down here as well. And now, while this may look like extremely incorrect geometry, and it somewhat is, this also at the same time guarantees me, besides this one face here, that my very scuffed roof texture is somewhat in place. And I'm going to select this again because I want to see everything at once. It looks like, where is it? This one right here. So I'm going to turn off X-ray mode because there's going to be moments where there's really random little faces. So the way image textures work, very important, UV editing works in Unity, is it's a 360 map. So while this might look like it's on the edge of the map, wherever the end of this edge is, it finds its way over here. So you see how there's a bunch of weird white lines here? That's because my edges of my rectangles here are too close to this white. So if I scooch it up a little bit, because again, it's overlapping, as you can see, barely overlapping over the edge of the map. So it's thinking, oh, where do we start? Oh, we'll just overlay this map again. Because in reality, Blender is taking a bajillion of the same image and just overlapping it into one giant grid. So I'm going to take this. I'm going to move it up just a tiny bit. And while that doesn't look very natural and lined up right, it's still the wooden texture I want. So again, as you can see, there's a lot of things wrong. And don't worry about the bottom of the house at the moment. We will fix that. I'm going to select these. And these are the other lines I have. So I'm going to move this into here to make it brown. I move this up to make it brown. And then we have all these little white lines. You can see, because these are off the map. The problem with them being off the map is that it believes that the continuation of this right here is actually this side. So again, I'm going to move it to this side. And remember, this is a very scuffed demonstration. I don't believe we'll have the textures completely lined up, but the idea is that you're learning how to actually take the image you have here and work with it. So I'm going to move all these up. I'm going to take this one face here, this single dot, and move this up. Take this, move this up. Let's see, I believe that is good enough. And from the top, it looks extremely scuffed. Again, my house looks a little funky. However, I like to imagine that this is a very scuffed wood roof. Now, this is what happens when you try to do a more complex shape like the top of my roof. You have to worry about really weird geometry that won't necessarily line up with the square tiling we have on my map over here. However, now that we have the roof somewhat done in a stage that I would consider good enough, this is where the really simple part of image texturing actually comes in if you have flat planes. So this is what I imagine the front of my house to be. I have face select on and x-ray off. I'm going to select these four squares, right? And this is really simple. I'm going to expand them again. And you might be wondering, didn't I just want those plain? Not necessarily, because I can bring this and see how this window right here, wherever I put it, is what it's looking at. And remember, if it's rotated, as you can see, I made a little oopsie. See how it's inversed? Make sure it is actually rotated the right side up. There we go. I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it on my door. Let's say the door's here. Make this a little fatter to encompass the entire door. And make it a little less wide. And again, they're just little windows. This is replicating what this sees over here like a projection. I'm turn off. Doom. Look, the nice thing about image textures is that they can often mask really simple geometry so you can have depth without sacrificing all those extra faces and such. So I have my door here. As you can imagine, we're going to make this a little more complicated, of course. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to make my window. So again, really simple compared to the roof. We'll get back to that later. We have my simple square. I'm going to scale it up, make it nice in the size that I believe it is for the window over here, and then move it over here. That is way too large of a window. And remember, the reason when I actually made this image texture is I have all these items backing the background of the actual house. So if you were to make your own image texture, keep that in mind. Window looks a little bit misaligned, so I'm going to go like this. There we go. See, I have a very simple window. Now, let's see. Next, I'm going to go to this side of the house, and we're going to make two more windows. Again, same thing as earlier. I'm going to go a little faster on this. I'm going to go over here, make my window. And again, remember that all of this is scalable. So let's say I wanted to have a really big window in the back. We will do that in a second. I can easily achieve that. Again, make it big, squish it. It's all about just simply putting it on your map where you want it to be. And see, these don't necessarily line up, but let's say that I was in a really small game, like this was the scale of the house. That makes enough sense for texturing. It looks like a house. Now, let's say this is the back of my house. I have a very, very nice backyard sauna window thing. I don't know what to call it. However, we're going to go over here and look at that monster of a window. Boom. I don't know why you'd have such a large window on the back of your house. However, I had this installed. I want light to be shining in my dining room at all times. But this is what I'm saying. See how these two are the exact same quality? You don't have to worry about any scaling quality thing. This is the power of image texturing. On a really simple object, of course. As you can see from a roof, it got really scuffed. And in fact, I might go back and just make the roof completely just brown, because you can do that. However, I'm going to go to these. These are the last two windows over here. We're going to do these really fast. Get really big, squash it, get even larger, bring it over here, go over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and again, I'm using the face mode because that's usually how I work with image textures. Of course, you can do vertexes if you want to mass select things. Make this big, and then this window is going to be a little smaller, and again, consistency is, of course, time consuming. If I were to want to make all these windows extremely consistent, besides this giant back window, I could go in and do that. The idea, though, I'm trying to show is that I have my palette here, and I select my faces, and I can simply drag and drop them wherever I want to be, like they are a projection. Next, we're going to deal with repeat textures and how to do tiling better. So, let's just say for some reason I'm feeling Christmassy. Currently for me right now, it is late spring. However, I want Christmas lights. So I'm going to go to these two faces here, right? And we're going to start applying this Christmas light texture over here. I'm going to expand this nice and large. I'm going to make this big. And we're going to go up here. Now, again, my faces are upside down. Oh dear. We're going to go right here, and this is where we're going to learn how to do repeat tiling. So right now, so far, most of my textures have been pretty dang spread apart. This is going to change though. So what I'm going to do is, again, make sure that this encompasses everything, and that most importantly, it doesn't go off the top map. If it goes off this map over here on the image texture, it is going to get wonky. About there, I'd say. Okay, boom. This is my one simple Christmas light texture. Now, I want this to go all the way around the house. Now, how do I do that? How do I make sure that this lines up? Pretty simple, actually. I just do the same thing. This is the long way of doing things. Of course, you can find your own system, etc. And this is upside down. Oh dear. I have to fix these for each one. But remember, the magnification of the whatever texture you have on the actual tiles themselves or the faces all depends on the size of the square. So if I make this really big, it goes smaller. If I make it really small, it magnifies larger. So it was about this much that one had, and then I bring it over and then make it a little wider. I want to make sure I have all my Christmas lights in there. We want a nice pattern, right? So I go here and then right around there, I'll make it just a little bit larger. Perfect. And again, remember that you can squash and stretch however you want. As long as you have both viewports open, you can clearly see what's going on. So I'm going to do this one more time. I'm going to make this really, really large. I'm going to go over here. And again, my Christmas lights are upside down. Oh no. I'm going to flip this over. And remember that your pattern can be as random as you want. Again, I'm trying to make these pretty lined up, but like let's say Christmas lights can get pretty messy. As you can see, it kind of has a slant. However, that's what a repeating texture looks like. It's the same exact texture I have over and over again, and I made this in the image to look really simple, and it does. So this is what we have, and then a couple of mini other things to spruce things up. I have a little mailbox here. I'm going to make this large, go wide, and I'm going to put this mailbox here. Again, it looks like everything is upside down. Just remember that we have this here. Go up. Remember, it's a lot. The thing about this, the UV editing that you'll probably realize as you mess around with it, is a lot of things are inverse. If I move up on the UV editor, the actual texture on the model moves down. So just fandangling until you get the right thing. There's my mailbox. I then go over here. I want to make a nice garden bed. And so I'm going to go here. I'm going to explore this. Make it larger. And remember, at any time, it'll select it automatically if you select the faces. It'll select it automatically in the UV editor. However, if you don't want to select the entire face object, you can just click off of it and it'll still keep it there as long as you don't select new faces. So next, I'm going to expand this pretty large. I'm going to drag and drop this over here again. Every single texture I've done is upside down. Whoops-a-daisy. Sometimes things export weird. And I'm going to make this nice and small. Make sure it doesn't overlap on the side, and boom. There is a nice, simple thing. And again, things like the repeating textures, I could bring all around the house. However, that requires time, and that's the ultimate thing when it comes to image texturing. If you get down the idea that you are having this palette, and that you are simply applying it to things, you can get around any simple like objects, like slap it on the side of your panel. You can, because look, see, these are very flat surfaces that have no depth whatsoever. However, me sprucing it up with these really simple image textures has made things nicer. Now, the next thing that often you want to have whenever you have an image texture is these little palette squares I have over here. Now, obviously, we can go to our Unity materials, right, and make completely new materials if I wanted to make all of these different colors, right? However, in order to make sure everything is baked into the same materials, and often when it comes to game design, you want to have everything condensed as possible. And so, What I would propose, if you were to make an image texture yourself or get one online, I mean, make sure that you have a little color palette chunks over here. And so what we're going to do with these, as you might be able to guess, I'm going to select this entire row all the way around the side of my house, minus the window. Again, we can Fandango to actually line this up. Go here, go here. I have this entire row of my house selected. That's all of these. I can simply make them really small, and then I'm going to go to this nice gold yellow over here and slap it down. And that's how you get a completely different color without having to make a whole new material. And again, the whole point around this is condensing your textures and materials into one single thing. Because when it comes to exporting the FBX, if I'm going to export this into a game, having one material per model makes things extremely easy. Because again, when you start programming and having to find, I'm just going to mess around with different colors here. When you have to start programming and finding all your materials, things might get messed up, etc., etc. It gets messy. Having everything condensed into the same place makes things extremely easy. And here's the fun part. Now that I'm going to go over here, and we're going to say, I know it's very sad, we're going to say goodbye to this window. I'm going to go down here. I'm going to make this really, 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 really small. I'm sorry, big window. We'll have to replace you. However, we're making another big window. And so this is the thing. What you can often do, and it really depends on the simplicity of model and how many faces you want, is I'm going to take this knife tool and we're just going to make a window ourselves and paint it using the image textures we have. And so again, these are just, I'm trying to explain these different methods to kind of introduce you to the topic of image and material texturing with a flat like object or shape. That's fine. I'm trying to get you guys to understand this idea. This is not an extensive tutorial on how to necessarily make a perfect design. However, I'm just expressing all these different options because that's the beauty of Blender. There's so many ways to do different things. We're going to go in here, and remember, when it's image textures, it's obviously easier to use faces. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to just make a bunch of faces of my own. I'm going to go boom, boom. Again, it's the knife tool. It's not perfect. I select this, and this is going to be my window shape in general. I'm going to make the rim of my window. And kind of think it like cookie dough cutting or Play-Doh cutting. I'm just cutting out the shape that I plan to use on my face. And again, the flatter surface you have, the easier it is to do things like this. If I were to have an advanced surface like the roof or like an actual character model, this would be very difficult as it would completely change the geometry of the object. And often when you have a shape smooth as well, it might make things more funky. And I'll show you the result of a shape smooth right now actually. If I were to actually try to, if I were to shape smooth this, yeah, let's see, subdivision surface. As you can see, depending on what the surface is, the image textures get even weirder. So don't worry about the bottom. Obviously, I can fix the bottom, but the more rounding that the image might do, it might actually ruin some of the textures that we create. So we'll see it right here actually. Sorry, I delete that. I'm going to keep subdivision surface on for now, okay? I'm going to select all the faces on the outside that make the rim of my window. And see how it's all these ones? I'm going to make them really, really, really small. And that's usually what happens if you want to go one color, you make it really, really small. Obviously, you can edit later. I'm going to this black. And see, this is what happens when you actually do subdivision surface and you actually make your own faces. It's going to curve things and make things look non-super square. Because that's what subdivision surface does. It rounds things out. It adds smooth. This is not the pointing window that we know. So I'm going to turn this off. Just a warning whenever you're trying to use subdivision surface to make your faces and models look less blocky. If you try to do this method, it will be a little chunky and it will stretch and squash in some weird places. I'm going to turn this off for now because, again, we want our nice square window. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to go boom, 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 boom. I'm going to select all these faces. And the same exact thing that we did before, we're going to make it really, really tiny and just drag and drop into the correct color that we want. And so this is a window. Imagine it's more of a screen window. It doesn't have to have these nice panels in it, but again, if I want to do that, I literally could. I would go simply, this is kind of a fat window segment, but that's fine. And remember, more faces does mean things are harder to render, so don't go crazy on making all your textures. Some things, remember, even though we are adding depth with these image textures, some things are better done simply by actually just modeling it yourself. For example, if we look at the side of this, this doesn't look, this is obviously extremely flat. I might do something like, hold on, I'll finish this window first before I completely forget what I was doing. I'm going to move this back over to the black, and boom, we have our window. Um, really simple things that would probably elevate the design of this model. For example, if I just move things out a little bit. And so see, while it's obviously still extremely flat, remember that an image surface in reality is a flat surface on a flat image. It can't substitute actual 3D space. And so as you can see, we can still put objects on it, these 2D maps on an object to make it look pretty. However, it's not a substitution for anything. And so my model, my house, it looks a little run down. I don't think anybody would ever love to live here. However, quickly as a reminder, this is the things we went over. We went over how to actually make an image texture. Remember, you go to Material, New Material, and then you go to Base Color, Image Texture, and select the image from there. I'm going to reselect this. And then we learned that you have to, very important, when you right-click your material on your house or whatever model you have, go to UV Unwrap Faces and Unwrap. This will make all the geometry whenever you select it, actual like squares and things like that, depending on what you have. And then, obviously, actually to see the material as it is in the image, you have to hit the UV editing menu. This will open two windows. Next, we started learning actually how to select a face and then actually apply an image texture to it very simply. So obviously we're going to move the window around. Maybe there's an earthquake happening. And then we learned how to do continuous textures with this really simple method that's just taking the same image and then lining it all up. As you can see, all of those are basically on top of each other. We learned that subdivision surfaces or rounded model modifiers in Blender will probably mess up these really flat image textures. They are meant for flat things, as I have said a bajillion times. And then lastly, that we learned that with making sure that you have your color palettes combined in there to reduce the amount of textures and materials you have on a single object, you can actually just straight up make your own special images and stuff using all these special faces that you made. And so this will be it for my introduction to material and image materials in Blender. I hope this tutorial helped you somehow if you are struggling with how to add materials to your objects. However, this is a basic tutorial to introduce you to concepts around just messing with materials in Blender. I hope you've understood this tutorial. If you have any questions, please reach out to me in the comments. The bottom of my house is still very weird. Looks like a Monopoly board. That is fine. Just remember that there are many ways to do this, and that this is one of them. Thank you.